Well, now, today we're going to see how we teach the children the letters of the alphabet. Before I go actually into the teaching method, I do want to talk to you about the form of the letters that you should use. Something, again, very bad, in my opinion, crept into education in the late 1920s, and that is they started to teach the younger children to write in a print form. We call it script in England. And they thought this would be easier for the children to write, which I don't think is correct, and they thought it would give them the same letter that they meet in books. See? Now, that meant that for 2 to 3 years of their school life they wrote in script. And as soon as they had got to the point where they could write without consciously thinking of the shape of the letter they were using, and without thinking of the spelling, because the marvelous thing is that we can see pictures in our mind once we know how to write, and our hand automatically translates these into squiggles on the paper. You know, it's an amazing faculty. And we don't have to think of the spelling, we don't have to think of where we put the letter, we don't have to think of the shape of the letter we're using, because we've had enough practice and we only have to think of the thoughts we want to transmit. You see, just as reading is the opposite, we can look at these symbols on the paper and we don't have to think about them, we just take in the sense and translate them into pictures and thoughts in our mind. You see, we must realize what an amazing faculty it is. Well, now, just as the child has got to the point where he can write without his mind being conscious of the writing itself or the spelling or the spacing, then we say to him, you have to change your writing. You see? Now, to me, this is dreadful. If I said to you tomorrow, you have to go back to the old Saxon script, what would happen to you? Can you imagine it? You would have to, you would not be able to learn or write quickly. You would have to become conscious of your writing for the next year or so. You see? And that is what we do to the children. And it completely breaks this flow. And they have to stop and become conscious of the letter they're writing. You see? And although there's not a great difference, there's enough difference to affect them very badly. I think some children never recover impetus after that. Now, it has happened in England that sometimes children have had their writing changed again if a new style of writing has come in. A few years ago, italics became suddenly popular. Now, italics is really an art form, a very slow method of writing. You break the letter into 2 or 3 strokes as you write, you see. But because it was suddenly the fashion, children who were righty had learned to write script and then had learned to write cursive were suddenly changed to italics. So the school could say, we keep up with the times, we're fashionable. You see, well, it was disastrous. See, luckily that method has that idea has pretty well gone out. So I think we should think of these things, and we should start the child writing the letter that he's going to write for the rest of his life. Now, when there was plenty of time, only a few people learnt to read and write, and there was no hurry. You could spend months on a single capital letter. All writing was done by hand. Then it was all right to write a script writing. People wrote in script and they never changed their writing. They wrote in script all their lives, and the writing was very beautiful, very perfect. But then the instruments you use were very, very expensive. In Europe we wrote on parchment, which was very expensive. And calfskin parchment was almost prohibitive. Even the monks who did those very beautiful books had difficulty in collecting enough money to buy the parchment. See, and a book was a very valuable possession. Nowadays we have paper, which is very cheap, and pencils and pens, which cost very little, and so we do have, and we also, for the needs of modern civilization and study, we need to write for speed. But as soon as we learned to write for speed, we had to learn a quicker method, because every time you lift your pen, your writing slows down. See? So if you took 2 or 3 strokes over a single letter, you would be very slow in writing. And then if you did one letter and then lifted your pen before you started the next, again, you would write very slowly. I know some people never really transfer from the script to the cursive, and they remain slow writers all their lives. I know that because of the way you hand me in essays. Well, now, the cursive writing, the basic letter, is very like the print letter. Only instead of coming down in a straight line and ending on the bottom line, it has a curve. And the children can write the basic cursive letter, you see, and they can write while they are still having to think of how to make the letter, and they are still having to think of the spelling. They can write the letters singly, and then when they are able to write without thinking of the letter or the spelling, for the most part, then they can, without any trouble, just join the letters, because they only have to continue the letter and join it on to the next letter. Now, when you take a letter and analyze it and see what the basic letter actually is, it's very like the print letter, except for curves that are added on. And so, as long as you use that simple basic letter without the joining strokes, the child has no difficulty in recognizing the print letter, having learnt the cursive letter. But we must eliminate the joining strokes. And it is actually wrong to teach the joining strokes, because the joining stroke is different, you see, for any 2 letters. If you're joining an O to another O, you join with rather a straight join. If you're joining an O to an E, the joining letter has to come down to the beginning of the E. If you're joining an O to an H, the joining stroke has to go up towards the top of the H, you see. So it would be actually wrong, as is often done, to teach the joining stroke. So we have taken the cursive letters and eliminated the joining strokes, and we just teach the basic letter, but with the curves, so that when the child comes to join his letters, he does not have to relearn the letter, and he already is writing the letter in one movement without lifting his instrument. And we never let them write a letter in pieces, lifting the pen in between different sections of the letter. If they do that, they never write well. Now, writing is something that's extremely badly taught in the schools today. Children are given dots to join up, given letters to copy, various ways of teaching, but nobody watches the child to see that he writes the letter in the direction in which the letter should be written. See? So that as long as the result looks all right, it's accepted. Now, I have looked at very many reading schemes, and sometimes you find very faulty books. There's one set in which the child has to practice writing O as round as an orange, you see. And no one minds which direction he writes it in or where he begins it. So he's going to do it this way round or this way round. You see, if you're joining up dots, it doesn't matter which dot you start on. You see, he writes it backwards. You can start it in dozens of different places, and it still makes O as round as an orange. But that is fatal. If you once get into the habit of writing it the wrong way, then it's almost impossible when you come to joined writing to learn to write it the correct way. This particular series, having the children first do this O as round as an orange, and then they do sticks. And then they put an O and a stick to make A. Well, you see, that will never lead to making a letter correctly. Not only that, but when you get to about the 6th book, you have to stop doing O as round as an orange, and you have to do it egg-shaped. You see, but it does sell a lot of books. But this sort of teaching is so faulty that the children never learn to write correctly, and very few people today can write using good handwriting. You compare the Victorian, the very beautiful writing that everybody did, you see, and the writing that there is today. You will know there's something wrong in the teaching of writing. So we have to be very careful. Now, I'll show you what I mean by these simple cursive letters, you see, without the joinings. You see, there is the I, here is a curve, you see, but you don't have a join here, because that would be incorrect, except in certain cases. And you can see when you look at these very simple basic letters that they are, any child would recognize a script A when he saw it, having learnt this A. Now there's a K. You see, you can write that K without lifting your finger, all in one piece. Whereas the script K, you have to lift your, you have to take 3 individual strokes. Yeah. Slight curve in the beginning, and a slight curve at the end. But when we taught the child to write that, he would write it, the letter, in this flowing way, without lifting his fingers. So that he couldn't just do it in pieces. I think perhaps I'd better go through the individual letters on the board with you and copy them carefully, because we would expect you to learn to write really well if you're going to write for children. Any teacher can learn to write well, and anything you do for your children, whether it's a poster on the wall or writing for the reading scheme, anything you write must be well written. Is what the children see is very important. They have these strong visual memories. If you write carelessly, if you write badly, then your children will write badly. So you yourselves will find you have to sit down and practice until you can write well. And then in writing, you must never make a mistake. I do go into schools and I see words that should have capital letters written without capitals, and punctuation in the wrong places. And this mustn't happen. It's a sort of gimmick nowadays to write without capitals. Well, it's not right for the children, and in fact, capital letters in the right places do enable you to read more quickly, because you recognize it's a capital is a proper noun, and of course proper nouns can be used as adjectives and all the rest of it, but having capitals in the right places enables you to read more quickly. So we must give them to the children, and anything we write for them must be correctly written and well written. Now, an A begins like below the line, is an ellipse, and then you and this curve doesn't want to be too big. It doesn't go up to here, because that curve will be slightly different according to the letter it joins. Now, the English B may be different to the one you use. and we join from here. Do you still do the open V?
Yes.
Yes. Fine, well, you can keep your own B. But I can't do it. So. C is really the same for script or cursive. Now the E must be a slanting E. It's only a slanting E that will join. A script E is a straight E, like that, and nothing will join. If you try and join an I to that, you have to go like this. So it must be that slanting E. Now I don't quite know which F you do. Ours is one that goes halfway up and halfway down. Sometimes it finishes like that, and sometimes it finishes with a curve, because it's going to go, the end is going to go here. The children learn it like that. Halfway, halfway. Now be very careful of the tails, because we have a habit of making rather large tails. See? And remember, when the G joins, this is just going to continue, and it will join through that line. And if you have a G with a great big tail, when you come to join it, it cuts the G in half. So you have to get the curve of the tail just right. With the I, you do really have to lift your instrument to put the dot on. Now, I do find, again, there are many gimmicks today, and I get a lot of young people writing, and they put a circle at the top of the I. Now, that would take a long time to do, slow your writing up. And it also makes it more difficult to read. I do a lot of correcting. I've been doing a couple of hundred of the correspondence courses this last year. And anything like this, you find your writing slows up. Or an angular writing, your reading slows up. You can't read so many scripts at a time because your eyes get tired. And I've had one or two who did a little diamond at the top. You know, but it's all right when you're young, you play about with your handwriting and you do these gimmicks, but don't hand them on to the children. Be very slow. And that again is going to join with a line. Letters are all made in one stroke.
Would that be confused with R?
Mm-hmm.
Would that be confused with R, capital R?
No, not at all. curve to begin with, curve to end with. Again, no gimmicks. I find people writing M's with a short arm in the middle. See, and that's not correct. It's slower to do. So do it yourself if you like fancy writing at school. Perhaps you don't do all these gimmicky things here. It's the fashion. I expect it to. I think it is. I think I meet it amongst the Americans as much as with us. Now O begins on the line. It's an ellipse. Now we have to close B nowadays in our cursive writing. And we join from here. But I expect you have the open Victorian piece still. So if you do, use that. Your R, I believe, may be different. That's the R we use, and I believe you use an R like this, don't you?
Yes.
Got that in. T is a letter that only goes halfway up. And the cross goes all the way through on the line. To do any other kind of a cross slows your writing. So you see a T like that, or a T with a cross going up like that. It's much slower than the cross that goes straight through, because you have to find it's the exact place to. So that the cross goes all the way through. X. Again, it's done all in one stroke. Oh, you are? Or Z.
Would you do the X?
Then maybe you do it. Did you say you do a different X?
Yeah, we just couldn't see that because it north now.
Can you see if I do it here?
No.
Well, I can't do it left-handed. Do it left-handed, I shan't do it very well.
It's just like two C's back to back.
Yeah, but
You can see it now? Yeah. Well, I can't write very well in this position.
two letters that seem to be significantly different as they're taught, I think, still in cursive, are the American S and the Z.
Yes, they are. You're still using the Victorian.
How do you connect that?
But
Excuse me.
that you have to teach. If you find one of my letters is different from yours, then you make one in your. I think I must sign the letters that are not correct for your writing. I think I must have an American set made. I think with you it's the B and the P, the R, the S, and what about the Z?
The Z.
You use this one?
No.
No. Well, I think
The X and the C.
yeah.
The C is much more associated.
Because I must say I like this X very much. It's a very good one. Yes.
Where would you connect that X? Could you do it either at the top or at the bottom? Depending on what letter you were using?
Yes. I just go on. Yes, they all connect. They connect just as easily as yours do. But it's a very clear alphabet. And there's nothing to unlearn, because when you're ready to join an M to anything else, you see, you only just have to do the joining stroke. Personally, I rather like those B and the P. You see, and again, I would just go on like that. But of course, you mustn't change the letters that you are using. I must make a note of the ones that I do really know the ones that are different with you and have been designed and made so that you can buy the set that suits you, but the most of the letters here suit you.
The problem is that the ones that are different are so different that they're not recognized. Well, they would be like the A and the G. Like the S, for example, and the F are so different.
I don't think that. Yes, that's what I'm saying. I must have those redesigned. I must have a set made that suits the American language.
But they're so different that I'm wondering if teaching them initially cursive would, would allow the children to have problems that they might not have if they learned just the script letters. Our script letters are more similar to your cursive writing.
Yes, well, if you any letter with the joining strokes removed is really practically a script letter, you know. The script letters were taken initially and a curve put so as to be able to write a joined writing. The joined writing grew from the script writing.
Except for R's, S's, F's, etc.
Yes, but then these are the rather fancy. You have a rather fancy Victorian letter, and the ones I find here, which are really impossible for children to learn, are very complicated capital letters. I don't know who designed them, but your capital G's and I's are not recognizable in Europe, and they must take the children a tremendous time to learn to write. And I think in this day and age, you really want to simplify your capitals so that children don't have such difficult capitals to learn. I know my secretaries can't read your names, and at first, until I tell them, well, that's a capital I or that's a capital G, I find them cutting the signature off the letter and sticking it on the envelope. Yes, or for cutting the address off the letter and sticking it on the envelope. Because they really are very, very fanciful letters.
To go into Marilyn's question a little bit more, I think what would concern me is the readability for for example, the American, or the Victorian R, S, or Z, if you initially teach the child the cursive as it's used in our
As to
society,
write.
then you'd
Yeah.
have to teach both, because they wouldn't be able to read the R or the
Well,
S.
he's got to learn both in the end anyway, hasn't he?
Correct.
All right then.
So
But what is easier, if he learns to write the correct letter, and no child is so foolish that he can't be told, this is the way we write this letter, and this is how they are in a book, the print letter, you see. It would be very much quicker for him not to have to relearn his writing, but to learn in the beginning that there were two forms of R. It's not so many, after all. It's R, Z, Z, and the B, which is an open B, is almost the same, really, as this
it
B.
does look like that.
It looks very like. I don't find they have difficulty there. I, as a child, learned to write the Victorian letters, which is much the same as yours, and I don't remember any problem with the printed letters.
I'm wondering about whatever the American, whatever the formal thing that the Americans are supposed to do, like if it doesn't fit, we shouldn't teach it, huh? You know what I mean?
Do you mean because most schools here start with print, you
No.
ought to start with print?
No, what I mean is like in my own writing, I've developed making the B like the English make the B because it makes more sense to me. So if I was teaching children, I would be inclined to just teach it like I do it because it makes more sense.
Yes, well, I think in time that will be accepted here as an easier form. And it would be quite all right to do that, provided you knew that they would be allowed to keep that form of B. But if the class they were going up to would say, the teacher would say to them, that's wrong, you must relearn that, then you can't do it. But if a school decides, you see, by 8 or 9, nobody worries what writing they're doing. You see? So if you were in a school that went up to that age and you all accepted that B, then I think that B and that P is a better one. So why not do it? And in different parts of America, I find different letters being used. Because there's no one single alphabet. And some say, well, I use the Palmer method, and some say I use this other method. And you'll find the letters are quite different. But what I'm saying is you must start with a cursive alphabet for writing, and the child must never have his writing changed. And it does really do something very serious to him. So that even if the letter is a complicated letter, he learns to write a complicated letter rather than starting with an easier one and having to relearn later on. It's that relearning that is such a very wrong process. Now, these I'm just putting on the board are the ones you'll find in this box, and whichever letter you write, you must begin it in the right place, follow it through in the direction in which it is written, and remember not to lift your instrument until the letter is finished, except to put the dots on the I, the J, the cross on the T. Whichever form of letter you're using, that applies. All right? And you must learn to write well yourself. And everything you do for the children must be well written, because they have these strong visual memories. What they see, they will reproduce. They have this, they're still in the stage when they imitate the adult. So what they see you do, they will do.
You show how the F is used in a word.
Hmm?
The F, you show how it's used.
so that this tail just carries on.
Would you write fox, please?
I told you my writing's atrocious, haven't I? Now you come and write fox for me. You're joined writing. Who was it wanted fox? Come on. Ah, yes. You can lift your pen here. But with my F begins here, I could make it like that. See? Or you bring yours forward.
Could you write higher on the board so we can see it on the side of the room?
But the X is slower because you had to lift your instrument.
I don't know.
She really go fast.
But there are not many letters, about 4 letters with you that are slightly different from that. And the others the same. But the principle is the same. Because your F is really the same. Then you needn't do the backward curl. Do a front face curl, that's the only thing. Well, now we look at the letters themselves. When we first teach writing, we're going to use the 3 senses: sight, touch, and hearing. So we have the letters either cut out in the very finest sandpaper. It mustn't be coarse sandpaper, it must be the very, very finest sandpaper. Or with these, the slightly roughness is blown on through a machine so that the letter doesn't come off. And the vowels are on blue card and the consonants are on pink card. And the card mustn't be bright or too bright or too heavy. The letters are in proportion to each other. You see that K and that A are in proportion. It's the I, the U. And for you, we must make those 4 letters that are different in the American style. Yeah. Now, for the first lesson, the teacher would get the child, they would both wash their hands so that their hands were at a normal temperature so that they can feel well. But also, the letters are going to be kept clean because they're going to be used a great deal. Now, there's a technique we use when we teach names, or in this case sounds. We use a lesson in 3 stages. So I think it would be easier for me if I had a child beside me to work with. It's a little bit difficult doing it with an imaginary child. So perhaps you wouldn't mind. Would you please come in sitting here? Now, for the first lesson, I would choose 2 letters that were very different in sound and very different in shape. If I choose extremes, it would be easier for her to learn them. There are plenty of pairs that would do, but you wouldn't teach B and D together. Now we are going to use the phonetic sound of the letter. The phonetic sound is the sound that occurs most commonly in words. I'll take off and t. If you say the sounds very loudly, you get two sounds. So if you say them softly, you only get one sound. You must be careful not to say t, you see, because then you get a second sound as well. Now I just take the two I'm going to teach to the table. The others I leave in the cupboard, because if you had them all there, the child, if you had given a good lesson, would want more, and if you teach too much in the beginning, then they're not interested another time. So with everything, we just take to the table the amount we're going to teach. Now, I'm going to show you the letters today. This one is T. T. And as I tell the child the sound of the letter, I feel it using my first two fingers that are going to guide the pencil, and I feel it very lightly in the direction in which it is written. And here I have to lift my finger to put the cross on it. I feel it 2 or 3 times. Now you watch. This is T. 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 This is T. This is T. T. Would you like to feel it?
No, am I supposed to repeat?
Yes, you just feel it. You need not repeat this. T. T. Would you feel it a little bit more lightly? T. We want her to feel it lightly because we don't want her to press hard with the pencil when she's writing. And while she feels it, we encourage her to feel it many times. While she feels it, the teacher goes on saying the phonetic sound. T. T. Yes. T. Yes. T. Yes. T. Now I just move it to the side because I only wanted to look at one letter at a time. Now this one is O. 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 Would you like to feel O? Yes. O. 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 Yes. O. Let's feel T. 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 Yes. T. T. Yes. T. O. 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 Sometimes your child begins saying "oh" as well, you know, and if they do, that's fine, but you don't ask them to. Oh. Yes. Oh. Now, when you think you have repeated that process enough for the child you're teaching, then you put both in front of her. And now I want to see if she has made the association between the sound and the letter. Could you feel T? That's right, that's T. Could you feel it lots of times? That's T. teacher is still repeating the sound. T. T. Right, would you like to feel off? Off. 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 Yeah. Oh. 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 Yeah. Ta. 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 And again, you repeat it as often as you feel you should for this particular child. Then you put them both to one side again. And the third stage. Now, would you feel this one and say the sound? As the third stage, I'm asking her to say the sound.
Ta. 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 Ta.
See, that's ta. Would you feel this one and tell me the sound?
Ah. 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 Ah.
Yes. This one again.
Ta. 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 Ta.
See it. This one.
Ah. 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 Ah.
If she was saying it incorrectly, then I would again correct her. She must get the right sound right from the beginning. Or if she felt incorrectly, again I would stop and redemonstrate. Now, those are the 3 stages, but at the end there's a little extra. I want her to understand what the letters are for, and I want her mind to start working on word analysis. So I take one of the letters and I put it in front of her and I say, can you hear T when I say top? T, top? Can you hear the T? You can? Can you hear T when I say tomato? Tomato. Do you hear T? Can you hear T when I say hot? Hot. Hmm? Hippopotamus. Hear T word? Hippopotamus. Hmm? Timothy. Hmm? And you put the T in different places in the word. Don't only use words with the T at the beginning. Kitten. Kitten. Hmm? And you suggest lots of words. You know, table. Let's think of some words with O. You hear O in orange. And hot. Hot. And omelette. Well, perhaps you'll be able to think of some words. If you think of any words with T in them, or any words with the O sound in them, you could come and tell me. You would then.
Yeah.
You wouldn't expect her to be able to do it straight away, but you give her the idea that she could. And very often during the day, a child will come up to you suddenly and say a word, you know, potato. Oh yes, and I should think, oh yes, I was teaching her to, see. Or they'll come out and say to you, potato that's got a P, what is P? See, and then you say, well, get to the box and I'll show you. Well, now the next day, you would take those two letters again, and you would be prepared to add another one. Get it ready before you collect your child, of course. This one might do. And I just revise the two I've taught, and if she's remembered them, then I add the new one. Now, could you feel that one and tell me the sound?
Ah. Ah. Ah.
Yes, you remember. Remember this one?
Two. Two. Two.
Yes. This one is ka. 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 Now C and K have exactly the same sound. They used to have different sounds, but nowadays sounds are the same. So I usually call this one big K and the other one little K to distinguish them. This is big K. 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 Actually, it's a very nice one to feel. Would you like to feel K? K. 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 Now, for the second stage, we're going to have all three here because she needs revision all the time or she'll forget the first. And the more you get, the more sort of fun it is. Could you find off and feel it? Off. You could say the sound because you know that one.
Ah. Ah. Ah.
Now, could you find K? It says K. 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 Yes. And could you find O?
Ah. Ah. Ah.
Could you find T? Feel it?
T. T. T.
I got to really mix them up and then I'll see if you know them. Feel T. I knew it, didn't you? T.
T. T. T.
O.
Ah. 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 Ah.
K. 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 See? Feel that one and just tell me the sound.
Ah. Ah.
Feel that one. See the sound.
K. K. K.
This one.
T. T. T.
See? Let's think of some words with a K sound. K. Can you hear K in king? King. Kitchen. Sock. Okay. Kick. Can you hear two K's? Listen. Kick, K, kick, K. Two K's in kick. Kangaroo. K, kangaroo. Lock. Kitten. Kitten. And again, you suggest a nice sort of words. I wonder if you remember any of the words with T. Tom. Take. Sit. Hit. How many of the words that we thought of yesterday with O? We thought of orange. Let's think of some more. On. Top. Up. Hot. 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 Long. Long. Song. Song. Lots of words with up. Did you think of any? You didn't? Oh, well. Perhaps you will before tomorrow. Now, I'm going to put these away. Because they wouldn't be on the floor, they'd be in there. Now, you see, this whole box full of letters. I'm going to put them in the box, and you can take the box whenever you like, and you can feel the ones you know, and you can look at the others. I'll show you where we keep them on the shelf. All right? You think of some words with K in them, some words with T, and some words with O. You see, okay. See? And so they learn the sounds of the letters. See? But this feeling is going to give them this muscular memory of the shape of the letter. And then a little later, when they come to writing the letter, you'll find they really write it very beautifully and without difficulty. So they're learning by sight, by touch, by sound. So they're getting to know the letters, but also their minds are working on word analysis. And you'll find they begin listening to the sounds in words, and they're always coming and suggesting words to you with different sounds in them. And that is preparation for the next step. Now, is there anything you'd like to ask about that?
In the beginning, if the child starts to notice that some of the letters are on the blue card and some are on the pink, what should your
Oh, well, then that's a very good opportunity to teach two new words. All the letters that are on blue, let's look at them. There are 5 of them. Let's find them. There, we have O, I, Those 5 letters on blue are called vowels. Vowels. Can you remember that word? Vowel. You say it. Vowel, yes. And all the words on pink, all the letters on pink are called consonants. You say that? Consonant? Yes, all these are consonants. So the blue, ones on blue are vowels, and the ones on pink are consonants. And we do everything to increase vocabulary, so it's very easy. Now I think, as from the point of view of teaching, it's the vowels that we have ourselves the most difficulty with enunciating clearly. And if you have any difficulty in distinguishing between the I and the E, you see, and they are very important because they occur in every word, then you practice as a singer does. You practice with your little finger between your teeth. Yes, you put your finger. You try biting your little finger. And saying, I, O, E. See how clearly you get it? It's a trick worth knowing. It makes your tongue and your lips go into the right position. All right, Ben.
When you were asking her if she heard the letters in various words, do you ever ask for if it doesn't include that note?
Oh, of course not. No. You as a teacher teach honestly and truthfully, straightly. You don't play tricks on the
No, I didn't
children.
do that. If you said, do you hear in another word, then
Yes.
she could say yes or no. I mean, for
No. That is, if you say to a child, "Do you hear t in Tom?" they expect it to have a t in the Tom. You see, and you're misleading them a little. And so I don't think you do that. You would only give them a word where the t was a quite definite sound in that word.
When you're doing this with one student, what do you do with all the rest of them? Another assignment or something?
Well, you'll find that once you have got your class, not the first week or two, but very soon, we have to have a talk sometime on how you actually start with an entirely new class. But very soon after, you will find that you have given these little short lessons in different things. This lesson perhaps takes longer than most, but there are many things you introduce the children to, and once you've shown a child how to use a bit of equipment, it's kept on the shelf, and that child can help himself to it. See? And so that most of your children have by now gotten the habit of just helping themselves to work, and you give a lesson to a child who hasn't yet begun work, and you know is ready for the lesson. Or perhaps when that child comes, you can even say, "Well, I'm going to give you a lesson with the letters. You get them out and I'll come in a minute." See, when the child has learned a certain number of letters, you probably say, "Get the box of letters and find all the ones you know." So that the child does that part of the work for you. It's a revision for him, and then you just pick up one of the new ones that you teach.
What if you're working with one child and teaching him something, and another child comes up to you and interrupts you while you're working?
Well, that will happen, won't it? Very often you just stop and answer his question. Or if it's something that will take a long time, you say, "Well, I'll help you with that as soon as I finish with Mary." No? Or you have someone who comes up to watch. Especially when you haven't done this very often, you often have another child who comes up to watch, and that's fine. But you ask him to stand at the side of the table where he's seeing the letter the right way up. You wouldn't let him stand at that side of the table and watch the lesson, because he would be seeing the letters upside down. So very often somebody comes and leans on you the other side, and that's fine. Sometimes he can even join in. But anything, any lesson you give the child does lead on to individual work. You see, so if you started a child on these letters, that child could help himself to the box, he could find the letters he knew, he could sit there feeding them and sounding them, you see, by himself while you were teaching something different. Just remember that all the exercises we give, the material itself, then teaches the child, and the child uses the material individually without you. I think that's the big difference between us and the open classroom. You see that there's this freedom of activity, this freedom of choice, but we put in work that is going to lead the children to the reading, writing, arithmetic, and a great acquisition of knowledge. See, so that anything they're choosing to do is really leading them somewhere.
And you would want each letter introduced by the teacher. The child, you told the child could go down to the shelf and get the letters, but
well, it does happen, you know, that a child gets a box of letters and finds ones he knows, and then he finds one he doesn't know, say, and he might come along, he very likely come along to you and ask you which it was, and whatever you're doing, you would then only just take a minute, and you would say, this is D. This is D. This is D. You feel it. D. Could you say it too? Could you say D? Yes. All right. If you spelled it correctly, you said it correctly, all right, you can go away and learn that. See? So you don't always need that careful lesson. You know, you make the situation fit whatever's happening. But he wouldn't have to, you wouldn't say to him, oh, you must wait until I've got time to come and teach you. Again, I find that with the reading, you see, if you're sitting here teaching a child, this is D, this is K, the few children around are hearing it as well, so that they are beginning to pick it up even before you start teaching them.
Did you ever refer to that as being a D rather than the sound?
No, we give the sounds.
Sound only.
The sound only. It's more advantageous to know the sound only. But of course you do nowadays get many children coming to school who have listened to Sesame Street or who have been taught the names of the letters. So that if I said to a child, this is D, you see, he might say to me, but Sesame Street says that's D. Or my mummy says it's D. And then you appear to be very pleased. You're not so happy because it's better, easier if they don't know names. And you say, oh, you know the names of your letters, that's good. Well now, you know every letter has a name and a sound. You know the names, so I should only have to teach you the sounds. You don't want to say, your mummy's all wrong, or Sesame Street is all wrong, you know, if they're being allowed to watch it.
Did you point out that the name of the letter also has the sound in it, and use that, like with the D, with the sound?
Well, all I would say is, if he says that's D, I would say, well, yes, you're right. Every letter has a name and a sound. You know the name, so I'm just going to teach you the sound. And then he's quite happy. From then on, you just teach him the sounds.
The children, if they have access to the box of letters, do you ever find them putting them all out and getting them turned around? For example, if they don't know some of the letters and they are still taking them out of the box. Do you correct them or just turn them around?
I just turn them round. I do keep half an eye and just turn them round. I know some people put marks on. I find horrible marks on sandpaper letters sometimes. Arrows, a way how to feel them. And dots or something at the tops or the bottoms, and I find this just confusing. I don't find there's very much trouble there, unless if they have really had the letters to play with on toys, then there's this reversal problem anyway. But feeling the letter the right way up so often really does help to correct that.
It seemed to me when you were giving the lesson that you emphasized when the child was being first introduced to the letters and then picking the letters out of the group, you emphasized that the child not be required or even asked to repeat the sound.
No, the sound or the name is the most difficult part. The first step in the lesson is to show the child how to feel it, and the teacher says the sound, the teacher feels it several times, saying the sound. Then the child is only asked to feel it, and the teacher continues to say the sound. Of course, if a child copies you and says the sound as well, that's fine, but you don't ask him to. The second stage, again, the child is going to be asked to distinguish which letter is which. You want to make sure he's made the connection between the sound and the correct letter. So you say, find and feel it. You see? But you don't ask him to say the sound, which is more difficult than the feeling for him. So he's only asked to feel it. And the teacher continues to say the sound. At the third stage, you expect him to have made the connection between the sound, the letter, and to be able to feel the letter and to say the sound. So it's at the third stage you ask for. Remember, if you're teaching them between 4 and 6, that they are learning a great deal through touch. That sense of touch is very acute. So.
When you present the vowel sounds, you give the short sounds. At what point do you then?
The long sound is nearly always connected with a special rule. You see, except there are exceptions, but then I've said we have 20,000 exceptions. But they're nearly always connected with a rule. That is A, isn't it? When it's followed by a Y, you say, of course, A, I, and Y were always interchangeable in English. If you have A and then a vowel and the E becomes mute and the vowel takes the name. You see, like cake. Now that's a definite rule. That E is mute and it changes the sound. So when the letter vowel has the name, it's connected to the rule.
Child to recognize it, and he picks the other letter.
Well, if I asked him for B, and he picked a K, then I would say that's K, you feel K. And while he was feeling it, I would repeat the sound. I don't want you to think that you can never correct, you see, because nobody can learn any new subject without making many mistakes, you see. And it would be quite wrong to get the child to think that he learned things correctly the first time without error. Give him a really false impression, and he'd be in for some bitter disappointments in life. When he learns to walk, he falls over simply hundreds of times. His mother catches him and laughs and gives it a rub and encourages him to start again, you know. And he eventually achieves walking. And so if he makes a mistake, we correct him. If the correction is going to help, with some early pieces of material, if he's learning to judge size or color, our correction wouldn't help him because nobody can teach you to judge size. So as far as possible, that material is made self-corrective, and we should come on to it. But with these other things, we correct to a certain extent, but our corrections must always be politely given. See, it's the way we correct that matters. And learning is never for haste or for speed. You see, in the old days, the teachers would correct you very rudely. I told you that yesterday, you ought to know it. See? Or Johnny knows it better than you do. You know, it was a hurtful way of correcting. But a child who has a teacher who doesn't correct when necessary is a very frustrated child. You see, he relies on you to put him right. And he knows he can't learn if you don't put him right. See? So you have to know when it's helpful to correct. Or when, like the spelling, he's spelling very phonetically, you couldn't correct every word, it's better to leave it alone and let him learn through reading. So they're the two things. But don't be afraid of correcting a child, provided you do it in a positive fashion, polite fashion.
In using this technique with older children, learning in a tutoring situation, do you think all these stages at the same time?
Yes, up to about 7, I think you would. With the older ones, you get the feel of the children. They, of course, don't feel as much as the little ones. So, the education is subnormal. The slow learner does very well with these and goes through all 3 stages. We once had a case of a little girl who didn't talk at all. She was in a school for the education is subnormal. And the interesting thing was that when she had the Sandpaper Letters and touch was allied to the sounds, she began to say sounds for the first time, and from there went on and learned to speak, and eventually graded up into a normal school. I wasn't teaching, but it was one of our students who was running this class. And it was, to me, it was exceptional, but it was quite an exciting example of the importance of touch to the children. Perhaps with older children, again, you might start with a written letter, but always, at any age, I found the sound of the letter and the phonetic method of reading succeeded where no other method had succeeded. Because after all, if you have your phonetic sounds, practically all words are partly phonetic. So that you can make a half read almost any word and guess the other half. So where children haven't learned to read, I've found this a very successful method. But the older the child, after say 6, 6.5, the slower they are at learning to read. Between 4 and 6, that age when they're not out of the period of learning through their senses, I find they learn to read very much more quickly, more thoroughly, taking the sense of what they read and so on. I have 2 friends who didn't learn. One didn't learn until she was 9 years of age, and the other until she was 10 years of age. They're both very intelligent. One's got a math degree and one a biology degree, but they both read slowly, much more slowly than I do, and they both of them have to read a thing twice to take in the full sense. They'll read a letter and remember one thing, but they won't remember everything in the letter. And there's not time for that nowadays. We have to read with speed. So I think this 4 to 6 is the ideal age. Are any of you doing this remedial reading?
I am.
Ah, yes. And
It works.
it does. You're using the phonetic method.
Right.
Yes, it really does work, doesn't it? Well, now I think we've finished a little early, so if you haven't, that's all I'm going to do in the way of materials. If I go on to the next lot of materials, I think it'd be too much.